The sound drifted across the prairie like something from another world, catching Logan Emerson mid-stride as he led his horse through the tall grass of Nevada Territory in the summer of 1876. And for the first time in his 26 years, he felt his heart stop completely before thundering back to life with renewed purpose. Logan had been riding fence lines for the Whitman Ranch for 3 days straight, checking for breaks and keeping an eye out for stray cattle. The work was solitary, exactly how he preferred it after spending 2 years as a cavalry scout during the Indian Wars. He had seen enough of humanity at its worst to appreciate silence and space. But this sound, this melody floating across the evening air, made him forget every reason he had for avoiding people. He tied his mare to a juniper tree and moved quietly through the grass, following the voice like a man in a trance. The sun was beginning its descent toward the Sierra Nevada mountains in the distance, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Grass Valley lay 5 miles to the east, a mining town that had boomed and was now settling into something more permanent, more civilized. But out here, civilization felt like a distant concept. The voice grew stronger as he climbed a gentle rise. It was a woman's voice, clear and pure, singing something that sounded like a hymn but sadder, lonelier. When he crested the hill, he saw her. She stood in a field of wild lupine and Indian paintbrush, her back to him, arms slightly outstretched as if embracing the whole sky. Her dress was simple calico, faded blue, and her dark hair fell loose down her back, catching the golden light. She sang with her whole body, swaying slightly, and Logan felt something crack open inside his chest, something he had sealed shut after too many deaths, too many goodbyes. He did not move, barely breathed, afraid that any sound would break the spell. The melody rose and fell, speaking of longing and hope, and a kind of beautiful sorrow that resonated with everything he had locked away. He had no idea how long he stood there, minutes or hours, time becoming fluid and meaningless. When she finally stopped singing, the silence felt almost violent. Logan realized he had taken several steps closer without meaning to, and when she turned, likely sensing his presence, their eyes met across 30 feet of wildflowers. She was younger than he had expected, probably around 22 or 23, with a face that was striking rather than conventionally pretty. Strong cheekbones, dark eyes that widened in surprise, full lips that parted in a startled gasp. For a moment, neither of them moved. "I apologize, miss," Logan finally managed, removing his hat and holding it against his chest. "I did not mean to intrude. I heard your singing and I could not help myself." She pressed a hand to her throat, clearly rattled. "You should not sneak up on a person like that. This is private land. I know. I work for the Whitman Ranch. I am checking the fence lines." He gestured vaguely behind him, though he had strayed far from any fence. "Your voice, it is. I have never heard anything like it." Her expression softened slightly, though wariness remained in her eyes. "Thank you, I suppose, but I prefer to sing alone." Clearly. He smiled, trying to appear harmless, though he knew his size, his sun-weathered face, and his profession made that difficult. "I am Logan Emerson. I have worked at the ranch for about 6 months now." "I know who you are," she said, and something in her tone made him curious. "Everyone in Grass Valley knows about the cavalry scout who came back from the wars and refuses to talk about it." Logan felt his smile fade. People talk too much. People talk exactly the right amount when there is little else to do. She took a few steps closer, and he caught the scent of sage and something floral, maybe lavender. "I am Miriam Brennan. My father owns the mercantile in town. This land belongs to my family, 10 acres my grandfather bought before he died." "Brennan," Logan repeated, searching his memory. I have been to your father's store. Tall man, gray beard. That is him." Miriam crossed her arms, but the gesture seemed more defensive than hostile now. "He does not know I come out here. He thinks I am visiting the widow Morrison on these evenings." "Why lie about it?" She looked away toward the mountains. "Because he would not understand. He thinks singing is for church and special occasions. He does not understand that I need it like I need air or water." Her voice grew fierce. "I need to sing or I will go mad in that town, measuring out yards of fabric and weighing flour and smiling at miners who smell like sweat and whiskey." Logan understood that need, though his own outlet had been riding, putting miles between himself and other people. "Your secret is safe with me." "Is it?" She looked at him with those dark, searching eyes. "You seem like a man who keeps his word, but I hardly know you." "No, you do not." "But I give you my word anyway. I will not speak of this to anyone." They stood in the field as the sun continued its descent, shadows lengthening around them. A hawk circled overhead, calling out in a voice that sounded lonely and wild. "Will you come back?" Miriam asked suddenly, surprising them both with the question. "Tomorrow evening, I mean. I come here most days around this time." Logan felt that crack in his chest widen. "Why would you want me to? I do not know." She looked genuinely puzzled by her own invitation. "Maybe because you listened like the music meant something. Most people hear me sing in church and they nod politely, but their eyes are empty. You looked like you were hearing something important." "I was," Logan said simply. "I am not sure I have heard anything more important in years." The honesty seemed to startle her, but she smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "Tomorrow, then, same time." She turned and walked away, disappearing over the far side of the hill, leaving Logan standing alone in the field with the fading light and the sound of her voice still echoing in his mind. That night, back at the ranch, Logan lay in his narrow bunk in the bunkhouse and replayed every moment. The other ranch hands played cards and told crude jokes, their voices a constant rumble, but he heard only her singing. He had spent 2 years trying not to feel anything, and now, after less than an hour with a woman whose name he had just learned, he felt everything at once. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Logan completed his tasks with mechanical efficiency, his mind constantly drifting back to that field. The ranch foreman, a grizzled man named Pete Holloway, noticed his distraction and commented on it. "You sick, Emerson? You look like you got kicked by a mule." "I am fine," Logan replied, hammering a loose board back into place on the stable wall. "Just tired." Pete grunted skeptically but let it go. The Whitman Ranch ran 3,000 head of cattle across a sprawling piece of Nevada territory, requiring constant work. They could not afford workers who got lost in their own heads, but Logan had proven himself reliable enough to earn some slack. As the afternoon wore on, Logan found himself calculating the time, counting down the hours until he could reasonably leave without drawing questions. When the sun finally began its westward slide, he saddled his mare and rode out, claiming he needed to check the western boundary fence. He reached the field even earlier than the previous day, his heart pounding with an anxiety he had not felt since his first cavalry engagement. What if she did not come? What if she had reconsidered? What if yesterday had been some kind of fever dream? But as the golden hour approached, she appeared over the eastern hill, walking with purposeful strides. She wore a different dress today, green with small white flowers, and her hair was pinned up in a more practical style. When she saw him waiting, she smiled, and Logan felt something settle inside him. "You came early," she said. "So did you." "I was worried you might not come at all. I gave you my word." Miriam nodded as if confirming something to herself. My father always says you can tell a man's character by whether he keeps his promises to people who cannot hold him accountable. Your father sounds like a wise man. He is, stubborn and old-fashioned, but wise. She walked to the center of the field, to the spot where she had stood yesterday. Will it bother you if I sing? That is why I came, so she sang. A different song this time, something lighter, almost playful. Logan sat in the grass, his hat beside him, and let the music wash over him. He watched her face as she sang, saw how her whole being came alive, how the careful wariness she wore like armor fell away. This was who she truly was, he realized. Everything else was just survival. When she finished, she sat down near him, not too close but close enough that they could talk without raising their voices. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Logan asked. "My mother. She was from Tennessee, had a voice like an angel according to everyone who knew her. She died when I was 12. Fever took her in the winter of '66. But before that, she taught me everything she knew about music." Miriam plucked at the grass absently. "She used to say that singing was prayer made beautiful, that God gave us voices to share our souls with the world." "Do you believe that?" "Some days. Other days I think singing is just the only way I know to feel free." She looked at him. "What about you? Were you always this quiet?" Logan considered lying, giving her some easy answer, but something about her directness demanded honesty. "No. I talked more before the wars. But after seeing what I saw, doing what I did, I found I did not have much to say anymore. Words seemed cheap and pointless. But music does not. Music feels true, like it is coming from someplace deeper than words can reach." Miriam nodded, seeming to understand. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky shifted through shades of pink and purple. Birds called to each other, settling in for the night. The air cooled, carrying the scent of sage and dust. "Tell me something about yourself," Miriam said. "Something you have not told anyone else in Grass Valley." Logan thought about it. "I have a sister back in Missouri, Emma. She writes me letters every month telling me about her life, her husband, their farm. I read every letter 5 or 6 times, but I never write back. I do not know how to explain why I cannot come home." "Why can you not?" "Because home feels like a place for people who are still whole. I'm not sure what I am anymore, but whole is not it." Miriam was quiet for a long moment. "I think you are wrong. I think home is exactly where broken people should go. But I also think maybe you need to find a new home, a new place where you can be whatever you are now instead of trying to be what you were before." Her words struck something deep inside him. "Is that what you are doing out here? Finding a new home? Maybe. Or maybe I am just trying to remember who I am underneath everything everyone expects me to be." They talked until the stars came out, until the moon rose fat and bright over the mountains. Logan learned that Miriam had 3 younger brothers, that she loved reading but the town had no proper library, that she could shoot a rifle better than most men, that she had once wanted to leave Grass Valley and see the wider world, but her mother's death had bound her to her family. Miriam learned that Logan had grown up on a small farm, that he had joined the cavalry at 22 seeking adventure, and found only disillusionment, that he played the harmonica though he had not touched his instrument in over a year, that he dreamed about the people he had killed and woke up sick with guilt and shame. When Miriam finally stood to leave, Logan stood with her. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow," he confirmed. This became their pattern. Every evening as the sun made its journey toward the horizon, they met in that field. Sometimes Miriam sang for an hour, working through her entire repertoire of hymns, ballads, and folk songs. Sometimes she sang for only a few minutes before sitting down to talk. Logan always listened with the same intensity, as if her voice was the most important sound in the world. On the 5th evening, Logan brought his harmonica. He played softly while she sang, finding harmonies that made her smile. The music twined together, his reed notes supporting her soaring voice, creating something neither could have made alone. "You said you had not played in over a year," Miriam said when they took a break, slightly breathless from a particularly complicated song. "I had not. But listening to you these past days, I started to think maybe I could again. I am glad." She touched his hand briefly, a feather-light contact that sent electricity up his arm. Music is too beautiful to abandon forever. On the 8th evening, a thunderstorm rolled in from the west, dark clouds building into towering fortresses. They watched it come, debating whether to leave, but neither moved. When the rain started, warm and sudden, they laughed and lifted their faces to the sky. Miriam began to sing, something wild and wordless, her voice rising above the drumming rain. Logan played along, harmonica notes bending and weaving. They were both soaked within minutes, hair plastered to their heads, clothes clinging. But neither cared. Miriam danced as she sang, spinning through the rain, and Logan watched her with an ache in his chest that was both painful and exhilarating. When the storm passed as quickly as it had come, they stood facing each other, breathing hard, grinning like children. Water dripped from Miriam's nose, her eyelashes. Logan reached out and gently brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. "You are beautiful," he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Miriam's smile faded into something more serious. "Logan, I know, I am sorry. I should not have said that." "Why not, if it is true?" "Because I am just a broken-down cavalry scout with nothing to offer, and you are." He gestured helplessly. "You are everything good in the world. You deserve someone who can give you the life you should have." "And what life is that?" "I do not know. Something better than this. Better than me." Miriam stepped closer, close enough that he could see the individual drops of water on her skin, could smell the rain in her hair. "Logan Emerson, you are the only person in this entire territory who sees me as something other than Joseph Brennan's daughter or a potential wife for some miner or merchant. You listen to me sing like it matters, like I matter. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how precious?" Miriam. Her name was almost a prayer. "I am falling in love with you," she said simply, fearlessly. "I have been falling since that first evening. Maybe I am foolish, maybe it is too fast, but there it is. I am in love with you." Logan felt something break open completely inside him, all the walls he had built crumbling at once. "I love you too. God help me, I love you so much it terrifies me." "Then stop being terrified and kiss me." So he did. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her in the rain-soaked field, tasting water and sweetness and hope. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing close, and for the first time since the wars ended, Logan felt like he might actually survive. Not just exist, but truly live. They broke apart slowly, reluctantly. Miriam touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "What do we do now?" "I do not know. Court properly, I suppose. I should speak to your father. He will have questions. He will want to know about your prospects, your intentions." "My intentions are to marry you if you will have me. My prospects are less impressive. I am a ranch hand making $40 a month. I do not care about money." "Your father might," Miriam sighed. "He might, but he is also a romantic at heart, though he hides it well. My mother was a singer in a traveling show when they met. He courted her for 3 months before she agreed to marry him. He gave up a promising career in banking back east to follow her to Nevada territory. I did not know that. Not many people do. He thinks it makes him seem less serious." She smiled. "But I think he will understand. Eventually." They walked back together that evening, Logan leading his horse while Miriam told him stories about her family. When they reached the point where the path split, one way leading to town and the other to the ranch. They kissed again, longer this time, committing the feel of each other to memory. "Tomorrow?" Miriam asked. "Always tomorrow," Logan promised. But the next day brought complications. Logan was called into the ranch office where John Whitman, the owner, waited with Pete Holloway. Whitman was a big man in his 50s, fair but demanding, who had built his ranch from nothing over 20 years. "Emerson, we have a problem," Whitman said without preamble. "Rustlers hit the north pasture last night. Took about 50 head. Pete says you know tracking from your cavalry days." Logan nodded. "I do, sir." "Good. I want you to lead a group of men, find those cattle, find those rustlers. I have contacted the sheriff, but he is dealing with some trouble at the mines. This falls on us." Logan felt his carefully rebuilt world shift. "When do we leave?" "Within the hour. Take 5 men, good ones. I want this handled quick and clean." There was no question of refusing. This was the job, the reality of ranch life. Cattle theft was a hanging offense, but more importantly, it was a direct threat to the ranch's survival. Whitman could not afford to lose livestock, and he certainly could not afford to look weak. Logan assembled his team, choosing men he knew to be steady under pressure. They rode out before noon, following the trail north into rougher country. The rustlers had been smart, driving the cattle through a creek to hide their tracks, but Logan found where they exited and picked up the trail again. For 3 days, they pursued the thieves through increasingly wild terrain. Logan fell back into old patterns, reading the land, anticipating moves, thinking like a man running from justice. The skills came back easily, too easily, reminding him of everything he had tried to leave behind. On the 4th day, they found the rustlers camped in a narrow canyon, the stolen cattle penned in a makeshift corral. Logan positioned his men carefully, waiting until dawn to make their move. The confrontation was brief and loud. 2 rustlers surrendered immediately. One tried to run and took a bullet in the leg. The 4th drew his gun and Pete Holloway shot him dead. Logan searched the dead man's pockets while the others rounded up the prisoners and cattle. He found nothing useful, just a few dollars and a letter from someone named Mary. He pocketed the letter, meaning to send it to whoever Mary was, to let her know what had happened. They made it back to the ranch 6 days after leaving. Logan was exhausted, covered in dust and dried sweat, wanting nothing more than to wash and find Miriam. But first he had to report to Whitman, help settle the cattle, make sure the prisoners were secured for the sheriff. By the time he finally made it to the field, the sun was nearly down. He was not sure Miriam would even be there after a week of silence, but when he crested the hill, she was sitting in the grass, waiting. She stood when she saw him, and the relief on her face made his chest tight. He walked to her quickly and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. "I am sorry," he said into her hair. "I could not send word. We were tracking rustlers. I could not leave." "I know. Word spreads fast in a small town." "I heard you left with a group of men, heard there had been trouble." She pulled back to look at him. "Are you hurt?" "No, tired, but not hurt." "There was shooting. The ranch hands who stayed behind were talking about it in the store. One of the rustlers was killed." Logan nodded, feeling the old weight settle back onto his shoulders. "He drew first. Pete shot him, but I was there. I was part of it." Miriam studied his face carefully. "You did what you had to do. You were protecting the ranch, protecting people's livelihoods." "I know. But it still feels like I am back in the wars, back in that violence. I thought I was done with that." "You are not back in the wars, Logan. The wars were about territory and politics and greed. This was about stopping thieves from stealing. There is a difference." He wanted to believe her, wanted to see the clear moral line she drew. Sometimes I worry that violence follows me, that I will never be free of it. Violence is part of this world, especially out here, but that does not mean you are defined by it. She took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. I know who you are. You are the man who listens to me sing like it is the most important thing in the world. You are the man who plays harmonica in the rain and makes me laugh. You are the man I love. Do not let the past take that away from us. Logan kissed her, pouring everything he felt into it. Relief, gratitude, love, hope. She kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers threading through his hair. When they finally broke apart, Logan said, "I want to talk to your father. Tomorrow, if possible. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other 2 weeks, but I do not want to wait. I do not want to waste time when I could be building a life with you." Miriam smiled, bright and beautiful in the fading light. "Yes, talk to him tomorrow, but be prepared. He will interrogate you like you are applying for a job at a bank. I can handle that. Can you handle 3 younger brothers who will want to test you in every way they can think of?" "How young?" 16, 14, and 11. Logan laughed, the sound feeling rusty but genuine. "I have dealt with cavalry officers and rustlers. I think I can handle your brothers." The next day, Logan cleaned himself up as best he could. He shaved carefully, put on his one good shirt, brushed the dust from his hat. The other ranch hands noticed and gave him hell about it, but their teasing was good-natured. Everyone needed something to hope for out here. He rode into Grass Valley in the afternoon, when he knew the mercantile would be open but not too busy. The town had grown considerably since the mining boom, spreading out from the original cluster of buildings into something resembling civilization. There were 2 hotels, 3 saloons, a church, a school, and various stores and businesses lining the main street. Brennan's Mercantile was a substantial building near the center of town, 2 stories with living quarters above the store. Logan tied his horse outside and took a deep breath before entering. The store smelled of coffee and sawdust, dry goods and leather. A woman he did not recognize, probably a customer, examined bolts of fabric near the window. Behind the counter stood Joseph Brennan, exactly as Logan remembered. Tall, perhaps 6'3", with iron gray hair and a beard to match. Sharp blue eyes assessed Logan immediately. "Mr. Emerson, is it not? From the Whitman Ranch?" "Yes, sir. I was hoping I could speak with you about a personal matter." Brennan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Personal matter, I see. Give me a moment." He finished helping the woman, wrapping her purchases in brown paper and accepting her payment. After she left, he flipped the sign on the door to closed, even though it was early afternoon. "Come upstairs," Brennan said. "We can talk in my office." Logan followed him up a narrow staircase to the living quarters. He caught a glimpse of a tidy parlor, heard voices from another room, likely Miriam and her brothers. Brennan led him to a small office lined with ledgers and papers. "Sit," Brennan said, settling into a chair behind his desk. "Now, what is this personal matter?" Logan sat, hat in his hands. "Sir, I have been spending time with your daughter Miriam, meeting her in the evenings, talking, getting to know each other. I want to be upfront and honest with you. My intentions are completely honorable. I would like your permission to court her formally, with the goal of eventually asking for her hand in marriage." Brennan was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Miriam mentioned that she had been spending time with you. She told me yesterday that you would likely be coming to speak with me. I appreciate that she was honest about it, and I appreciate that you are doing this properly rather than sneaking around behind my back. I would never disrespect your daughter or your family that way, sir." "Good. Now tell me about yourself. I know the basics, everyone in town does. Cavalry Scout, Indian Wars, came here 6 months ago. But who are you really? What kind of man wants to marry my daughter? Logan had known this was coming, but it was still difficult. He forced himself to meet Brennan's eyes. I grew up on a farm in Missouri. My parents are still there, working the same land. I have one sister, married with a family of her own. I joined the cavalry when I was 22, thinking I would see the world, make a difference. Instead, I saw good men die and did things I am not proud of in the name of following orders. When my enlistment ended, I could not go home, could not face my family with the things I had done weighing on me. So I came west, ended up at the Whitman Ranch. I am a good worker, reliable, honest. I make $40 a month and have saved most of it. I do not drink much, do not gamble, do not frequent the sporting houses. I am in love with your daughter, sir, and I want to spend the rest of my life making her happy. Brennan leaned back in his chair, steeping his fingers. Miriam's mother was the love of my life. I met her when I was 28 and she was 24. She was singing in a traveling show, moving from town to town. I saw her perform one night in St. Louis, and I knew immediately that she was the woman I wanted to marry. Took me 3 months to convince her, another 6 months to actually have the wedding. We had 13 good years before the fever took her. Not nearly enough, but I am grateful for what we had. Miriam told me a little about her mother. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. The reason I am telling you this is because I understand what it is like to meet someone and know, just know, that they are your person. I see that same certainty in Miriam when she talks about you. I also see that you are a good man trying to outrun your demons. Let me be very clear, Mr. Emerson. If you hurt my daughter, if you let those demons win and take it out on her, I will make you regret it. Am I understood? Yes, sir, completely. But I swear to you I would cut off my own hand before I would hurt Miriam. Brennan nodded slowly. I believe you mean that, all right. You have my permission to court her, but I expect you to do it properly. Call on her here, let her brothers and me get to know you. No more sneaking off to private fields. Logan felt relief flood through him. Thank you, sir. I promise I will honor your trust. See that you do. Now, would you like to stay for dinner? Might as well start getting to know the family. Dinner at the Brennan household was loud and chaotic in the best possible way. Miriam's brothers, Thomas, William, and young Joseph Jr., tested Logan relentlessly with questions and challenges. Thomas, the 16-year-old, wanted to arm wrestle. William, 14, peppered him with questions about the cavalry. Joseph Jr., 11, showed him his collection of interesting rocks and asked if Logan had ever killed anyone. Joseph, Miriam scolded, her face flushing red. That is an inappropriate question. It is all right, Logan said quietly. He looked at the boy seriously. Yes, I have, in the war. It is not something I am proud of, and it is not something you should aspire to. Killing someone, even for good reasons, changes you in ways you cannot undo. Joseph Jr. nodded solemnly, seeming to understand that this was not a topic for further questioning. The dinner itself was simple but delicious. Roasted chicken, potatoes, vegetables from their garden. Logan complimented the cooking and learned that Miriam had prepared most of it with help from Thomas, who apparently had a talent for baking. After dinner, Brennan gave permission for Logan and Miriam to take a walk, as long as Thomas went with them as a chaperone. The 16-year-old rolled his eyes but agreed. They walked through the town as the evening settled in, Thomas trailing behind at a respectful distance. Miriam took Logan's arm, smiling up at him. That went well, I think. Your father is terrifying. He likes you. Trust me, if he did not, you would know. Your brothers are quite the group. They are terrible, I apologize. Joseph especially. He has no sense of boundaries. I like them. They remind me of my sister's kids, always curious about everything. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. nodding to neighbors and townsfolk. Logan noticed the looks they received, the curious glances and whispered conversations. News of their courtship would be all over Grass Valley by morning. "Does it bother you?" Miriam asked, noticing his attention to the onlookers. "People talking. Not if it does not bother you. It does not. Let them talk. I am happy, happier than I have been in years." Logan squeezed her hand. "Me too." Over the following weeks, Logan fell into a new rhythm. He worked at the ranch during the day, pushing himself hard so Whitman had no complaints. In the evenings, he rode into town to call on Miriam. Sometimes they sat in the parlor with her family, talking and playing games. Sometimes they walked through town or attended church social events. Always there was music. Miriam sang at every opportunity, and Logan often accompanied her on harmonica. The town began to see them as a unit, a couple. The old women smiled and predicted a wedding by Christmas. The young women sighed and said it was romantic. The men slapped Logan on the back and made jokes about ball and chain. But it was not all easy. Logan had nightmares, waking in the bunkhouse soaked in sweat, haunted by faces of the dead. On those days, he was quiet and withdrawn, and Miriam learned to recognize the signs. She did not push him to talk but stayed close, her presence a steady anchor. One evening in late August, about 2 months after they had met, Logan arrived at the mercantile to find Miriam upset. Her eyes were red from crying, though she tried to hide it. "What happened?" Logan asked immediately, looking around for threats. "Nothing happened exactly. I just had a disagreement with my father." "About what?" she sighed. "Come upstairs. We can talk in my room. It is the only private place in this whole building." Miriam's room was small but tidy, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the street. She sat on the bed and Logan took the single chair, maintaining propriety even though they were alone. "Father received a letter from his brother in San Francisco," Miriam began. "Uncle Robert owns a successful import business. He has offered to sponsor one of us, to bring one of my brothers to the city to learn the trade. It is an incredible opportunity. Thomas or William could have a real future, something beyond what Grass Valley can offer." "That sounds like good news." "It is, but Father wants me to go instead." Logan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "To San Francisco. He thinks I am wasting my life here. He loves me, I know he does, but he sees me as settling, marrying a ranch hand when I could have more. Uncle Robert has connections, knows wealthy families. Father thinks I could make a better match in the city, could have the life my mother always dreamed for me." "What do you want?" "I want to stay here. With you. I do not care about wealthy families or San Francisco society. I care about you." She looked at him, tears threatening to fall again. "But I also do not want to disappoint my father. He has sacrificed so much for us. And I keep thinking, what if he is right? What if I am being foolish, throwing away opportunities for a love that might not last?" Logan stood and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Miriam, look at me. I cannot offer you wealth or society or any of the things San Francisco could give you. But I can offer you my whole heart, my complete devotion, a life where you are valued for exactly who you are. I cannot promise it will always be easy, but I can promise I will love you every single day for the rest of my life." "I know, I believe you." "Then trust that, trust us. I am not saying this to hold you back. If you want to go to San Francisco, if you truly think that is what would make you happy, then you should go. But do not go because you are afraid or because you think you should want something other than what you have." Miriam leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "I am staying." "I already told him. I just needed to hear you say those things, needed to know you were certain." "I have never been more certain of anything." They sat like that for a long moment, breathing together, finding peace in each other's presence. Then Miriam pulled back and smiled, wiping her eyes. "Will you marry me?" she asked. Logan blinked, surprised. "Are you proposing to me?" "I am. Women can do that, you know. There is no law saying I have to wait for you to ask. So, Logan Emerson, will you marry me?" He laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. "Yes, absolutely yes." Though I had planned a proper proposal, had even started saving for a ring. Keep saving. You can still do a proper proposal, but I wanted you to know without any doubt that I am choosing you, choosing this life with you. "When?" Logan asked. "When do you want to get married?" "Soon. Next month, maybe, or the month after. I do not want a long engagement. I want to start our life together." Logan stood and pulled her up with him, wrapping her in his arms. "Then that is what we will do. I will speak to your father officially, ask for your hand properly. We will do this right." That conversation with Joseph Brennan was easier than the first. The older man listened to Logan's formal request, asked about his plans for supporting a family, and finally nodded his approval. "I will be honest, Emerson. This is not what I envisioned for Miriam when she was a little girl. I imagined her with someone more established, someone who could give her security and comfort. But I also remember being young and in love, remember choosing passion over practicality. And I see how you look at her, how she lights up around you. That is worth more than money or position. I will do everything in my power to make her happy, sir. I believe you will try. That is all any of us can do." They set the wedding for October 15th, giving them about 6 weeks to prepare. Miriam wanted something simple, just family and close friends, a ceremony at the church followed by a meal at the mercantile. Logan contributed what money he had saved, and Whitman gave him a generous bonus after hearing the news, along with a promise of a small cabin on the ranch property for the newlyweds. The weeks flew by in a flurry of preparation. Miriam sewed her own wedding dress, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Logan purchased a new suit, his first ever, and felt absurdly proud walking out of the tailor's shop. They spent every possible moment together, talking about their future, making plans, dreaming. One evening in early October, about a week before the wedding, Logan convinced Miriam to return to their field one last time as an unmarried couple. They rode out together, Miriam sitting side saddle behind him on his mare, her arms wrapped around his waist. The field looked different in early autumn. The wildflowers had faded, replaced by golden grasses that whispered in the wind. The air held a chill that promised winter eventually, though for now the days remained warm. Miriam stood in her familiar spot and sang, her voice ringing clear and pure across the prairie. Logan accompanied her on harmonica, the notes blending and weaving. They ran through all their favorite songs, laughing when they fumbled harmonies, starting over until they got it right. When they finally stopped, breathing hard from laughter and exertion, Logan pulled her close. "You remember the first time I saw you here? I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I thought you were a creepy stranger who needed to learn about boundaries." Logan laughed. "Fair enough. When did that change? When you looked at me like my singing mattered, like I mattered. No one had looked at me like that since my mother died." She touched his face gently. "You gave me back a piece of myself that I thought was lost forever. You did the same for me. I was barely living before I met you, just going through motions. You made me want to feel again, want to hope again." "We saved each other," Miriam said softly. "We did." They made love that evening in the field, their first time, surrounded by grass and stars and the distant sounds of coyotes calling. It was awkward and sweet and perfect, a claiming and a gift freely given. Afterward, they lay wrapped in Logan's bedroll, talking quietly about everything and nothing. "Are you afraid?" Miriam asked. "About marriage, about the future," terrified, but also excited, mostly excited, Good, me too. The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather, cool and clear with endless blue skies. The church was packed. It seemed everyone in Grass Valley had turned out to witness the ceremony. Logan stood at the altar in his new suit, hands shaking slightly, Pete Holloway beside him as best man. Then the music started and Miriam appeared in the doorway, her father's arm. Logan forgot how to breathe. She was radiant in her simple dress, her hair pinned up with small white flowers woven through it. She smiled at him, that brilliant smile that made his heart race, and walked down the aisle toward their future. The ceremony was brief. They exchanged vows, simple promises to love and honor each other. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Logan kissed Miriam like they were the only two people in the world, and the congregation erupted in applause and cheers. The celebration afterward was joyful and loud. Tables had been set up in the street outside the mercantile, loaded with food that the whole community had contributed. There was music and dancing and more laughter than Logan had heard in years. His face hurt from smiling. As the evening wore on, people began to drift away to their own homes. Brennan pulled Logan aside for a final word. "Take care of her, son. She is the best thing in my life." "She is the best thing in mine too, sir. I will spend every day trying to deserve her." Brennan clasped his shoulder. "You already do. Now go on, get out of here. You have a wedding night to attend to." Logan and Miriam rode out to their new cabin as the moon rose. It was small, just 2 rooms, but it was theirs. Whitman had furnished it simply but adequately. A bed, a table, chairs, a stove. Miriam's few possessions had already been moved in, her dresses hanging on pegs, her mother's Bible on the table. They stood in the doorway, Logan holding Miriam in his arms, looking at their home. "Are you happy?" Logan asked. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be." "Good. That is all I want for the rest of our lives, your happiness. And yours. I want that too." They went inside and closed the door on the world, beginning their life together in earnest. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, learning to share space and routines, discovering each other's habits and quirks. Miriam was an early riser who sang while she cooked breakfast. Logan was quiet in the mornings, needing coffee and silence before he could face conversation. Miriam kept everything obsessively tidy, while Logan tended to drop his clothes wherever he took them off. They bickered occasionally, small disagreements about household matters, but they always resolved things quickly, neither willing to let conflict fester. Logan continued working at the ranch, putting in long days during the busy season. Miriam took in sewing and helped at her father's store occasionally, keeping herself occupied. But every evening they came together in their cabin, making dinner, talking about their days, making love, planning their future. In December, Miriam missed her monthly courses. She told Logan on Christmas Eve, giving him the news like a gift. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the cabin, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby," he kept repeating, as if saying it would make it more real. "We are actually having a baby. We are. Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. The pregnancy was relatively easy. Miriam had some morning sickness early on, but otherwise felt well. Her belly grew slowly, then suddenly, transforming her body. Logan was fascinated and terrified in equal measure, constantly worrying about her health, her comfort, whether he would be a good father. "You will be wonderful," Miriam assured him during one of his midnight worrying sessions. "You are kind and patient and loving. That is what children need most." "What if I pass on my nightmares, my darkness? Then we will help our child through it, just like I help you. Darkness is not contagious, Logan. Love is." Their son was born in late August of 1877, during a heat wave that made everyone in the cabin miserable. The labor was long and difficult, nearly 20 hours. Logan paced outside, not allowed in the room, listening to Miriam's cries and feeling helpless. When the midwife finally emerged holding a squalling, red-faced infant, Logan's knees nearly gave out with relief. "You have a son," the midwife said, handing the baby to him. "And your wife is fine, tired but fine." Logan looked down at the tiny person in his arms, unable to quite believe this was real. The baby had stopped crying and was staring at him with unfocused dark eyes. He had a shock of black hair and tiny perfect fingers that gripped Logan's thumb with surprising strength. "Hello," Logan whispered. "I am your papa. I have been waiting to meet you." They named him Henry Thomas, after both grandfathers. Henry proved to be a loud baby with strong opinions about everything, but Logan and Miriam loved him fiercely. Logan would walk the cabin floor for hours when Henry could not sleep, singing the songs Miriam had taught him, humming melodies on his harmonica. Miriam nursed and soothed, and somehow managed to keep them all functioning despite constant exhaustion. The first year of Henry's life was chaotic and wonderful. Logan cut back his hours at the ranch with Whitman's blessing, wanting to spend more time with his family. Money was tight, but they managed. Miriam's sewing brought in some income, and the Brennan family helped when needed, never making them feel like charity cases. Henry's first steps came at 13 months, tottering from Logan to Miriam and back again, both parents cheering like he had won a race. His first word was "Mama," which delighted Miriam and made Logan pretend to be offended. His second word was "Da," which evened the score. When Henry was 2, Miriam became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first. She was tired constantly, could not keep food down for months, and worried something was wrong. But the midwife assured them this was normal, that every pregnancy was different. Their daughter Emma Grace was born in March of 1880, a beautiful baby with Logan's blue eyes and Miriam's dark hair. She was quieter than Henry had been, more content to simply observe the world. Henry was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to hold her, sing to her, share his toys. With 2 small children, the cabin felt impossibly small. Logan approached Whitman about building an addition, offering to do the work himself on his time off. Whitman agreed and even contributed materials, always generous to his workers. Over the course of 6 months, Logan added 2 more rooms to the cabin, a bedroom for the children and a separate space for himself and Miriam. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Logan worked, came home to his family, spent evenings playing with his children and loving his wife. Miriam sang constantly, teaching the songs to Henry and Emma. The cabin was always filled with music and laughter. When Emma was 3 and Henry 5, Miriam surprised Logan by announcing she wanted to teach music formally. The town had no music teacher, and several families had expressed interest in having their children learn. "What do you think?" she asked nervously. "Would you mind if I brought students to the house?" "Mind, Miriam, that is a wonderful idea. You should have been teaching all along." "I have been busy with the children. They are older now. They do not need you every second, and they could benefit from being around other children." So Miriam became the Grass Valley music teacher, giving lessons twice a week from their home. She taught children and adults, beginners and advanced students, charging modest fees that nonetheless added up. She was good at it, patient and encouraging, and her students flourished. Logan watched her teach one afternoon, standing in the doorway unnoticed. She was working with a young girl of about 7, teaching her a simple hymn. Miriam's face was animated, alive with joy, and Logan felt his heart swell with love and pride. This was who she was meant to be. This was the life she deserved. The years continued to pass, each one bringing changes. Henry started school and proved to be bright and curious, particularly interested in reading and mathematics. Emma was quieter but equally intelligent, with a talent for drawing that surprised everyone. They were good children, kind and helpful, and Logan and Miriam were endlessly grateful. Logan continued to work at the Whitman Ranch, eventually being promoted to foreman when Pete Holloway retired. The increased responsibility came with better pay, allowing them to save money and make improvements to their home and lives. They added a small barn for chickens and a milk cow, planted a larger garden, built a proper porch where they could sit in the evenings. The nightmares never completely went away, but they became less frequent, less intense. Logan learned to manage them, learned to come back from them faster with Miriam's help. The darkness was still there, would always be there, but it no longer defined him. He was a husband, a father, a foreman, a member of the community. The cavalry scout, he had been felt like another person entirely. When Henry was 12 and Emma 9, tragedy struck the Brennan family. Joseph Brennan, who had seemed healthy and vital despite his age, collapsed in the mercantile one afternoon. He died before the doctor could arrive, his heart simply giving out. The loss devastated Miriam, who, despite being married with her own family, had remained very close to her father. Logan held her through the grief, let her cry and rage and remember. He took over the practical matters, organizing the funeral, helping her brothers handle their father's affairs. The mercantile was sold, though Thomas, now 27 and married himself, took over managing it for the new owners. The money from the sale was split among the siblings, giving Miriam and Logan financial security they had never had before. "I keep thinking I should have told him more often how much he meant to me," Miriam said one night, several weeks after the funeral. "How grateful I was that he let me marry you, that he supported us. He knew. Parents always know. I hope so." She was quiet for a moment. "He told me once, near the end, though I did not know it was near the end, that he was proud of the life I had built, proud that I had found real love and happiness. He said I reminded him of my mother, the way she was when they were young. That is a beautiful thing to be told. It was. I will treasure it." Life continued as it always does. Henry grew into a serious young man, eventually taking a position as a clerk at the land office. Emma discovered a passion for teaching and began assisting at the school. Both remained close to home, neither in a rush to leave Grass Valley. When Logan was 48 and Miriam 45, their children both still living at home, they took a trip back to Missouri. Logan had finally worked up the courage to face his family after more than 20 years. Miriam had encouraged him, convinced him that he needed this closure, this reconnection. His parents were older, grayer, but alive and well. His sister Emma had 5 children of her own, ranging from teenagers to toddlers. The reunion was emotional, everyone crying and talking over each other. Logan introduced Miriam and their children, watching as his family embraced them completely. "I am sorry I stayed away so long," Logan told his mother on their last evening there. "I was ashamed of what I had become in the war." "You were never anything to be ashamed of," she said firmly. "War changes people. That is not your fault. But I can see you found your way through it. You have a good life, a good family. That is all a mother can ask for." The trip provided Logan with a sense of peace he had not realized he needed. He had made his peace with his past, with the choices he had made. He was no longer running from anything. Back in Grass Valley, Logan and Miriam settled into the comfortable rhythms of middle age. They still made music together, still walked hand in hand through town. Logan still looked at Miriam like she was the most precious thing in his world, and she still sang like her voice could heal all wounds. Henry met a girl named Sarah from a neighboring ranch and courted her with the same earnest intensity Logan had once shown. They married when Henry was 23 and Sarah 21, settling in town near the land office. Emma showed no interest in marriage, content with teaching and living at home, and Logan and Miriam supported her choice completely. The grandchildren started arriving when Logan was 50. First came James, Henry and Sarah's firstborn, followed 2 years later by twin girls, Alice and Charlotte. Then Emma surprised everyone by falling in love with the new schoolteacher, a kind man named Peter who had moved from San Francisco. They married quickly and had their first child, a son named Joseph after Miriam's father, within a year. Logan loved being a grandfather, spoiling his grandchildren shamelessly while Miriam pretended to disapprove. He taught them to ride, to track, to appreciate the land. Miriam taught them to sing, passing on the same songs her mother had taught her. The family gatherings were loud and chaotic, filled with multiple generations all talking and laughing at once. On quiet evenings, when it was just the two of them in their cabin, Logan and Miriam would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, sometimes Miriam sang softly while Logan played his harmonica. "Do you ever think about that first evening?" Miriam asked one night when they were both in their late 50s. "When you heard me singing in the field?" "Every single day," Logan said honestly. "I think about what would have happened if I had walked a different direction, if I had been too far away to hear you. I think about how close I came to missing you entirely. But you did not miss me. You found me, or I found you, or we found each other. We did. Best day of my life." Miriam leaned against his shoulder. "Mine too. Everything good in my life came from that evening. You, our children, our grandchildren, this life we built together. All of it traces back to me singing alone in a field. You are still the most beautiful sound I have ever heard." She laughed. "My voice is not what it used to be. No, it is better. It has lived, it has loved, it has survived. That makes it more beautiful, not less." They sat until the stars came out, until the chill drove them inside. Logan banked the fire while Miriam prepared for bed. They lay together under quilts Miriam had made over the years, Logan's arm around her, her head on his chest. "I love you," Miriam said sleepily. "I have loved you since the moment you looked at me like my singing was the most important thing in the world. I love you too. Always have, always will." They drifted to sleep, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of love and music and family. Outside, the Nevada night was vast and dark, studded with 1,000,000 stars. Somewhere out there was the field where it had all begun, where a cowboy had heard a woman singing and fallen in love with the sound. The years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their story. Logan eventually retired from the ranch at 62, his body finally protesting the hard physical labor. Whitman threw him a party, half the town attending, everyone toasting the man who had gone from broken cavalry scout to respected foreman and community pillar. Retirement suited Logan. He spent his days helping with the grandchildren, working in his garden, taking long rides through the territory he had come to love. Miriam continued teaching music into her 60s, finally stopping only when her hands began to trouble her with arthritis. They sold the cabin to a young family and moved into town, buying a small house near Henry and Sarah. The house had a parlor perfect for family gatherings, a kitchen with a modern stove that Miriam loved, and a wide porch where they could watch the world go by. The grandchildren grew, got married, had children of their own. Logan and Miriam became great-grandparents, then great-great-grandparents. The family tree sprawled and branched, all of it rooted in that first evening in the field. When Logan was 74, he suffered a mild heart incident that scared everyone. He recovered, but it was a reminder that time was not infinite. He sat down with Henry and Emma, made sure all his affairs were in order, ensured that Miriam would be taken care of. "Stop talking like you are dying tomorrow," Miriam scolded when he told her what he had done. "You are going to be around for years yet. I hope so. But I need to know you will be all right, whatever happens." "I will be all right because you taught me how to be strong, how to face difficult things. But I would prefer to face them together for a good while longer." "That is my preference too." They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by family. More than 40 people crammed into their parlor and spilling onto the porch. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren put on a musical performance, singing the songs Miriam had taught them. Logan sat holding Miriam's hand, tears streaming down his weathered face, overwhelmed by the beauty of what they had created. 50 years, Miriam said wonderingly. "How did we get here so fast? I have no idea. Feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." That night, after everyone had gone home and they were preparing for bed, Miriam said, "Will you take me back to the field? One more time." Logan understood immediately. "Tomorrow, we will go tomorrow." They rode out the next day in a borrowed wagon, Logan's knees too bad now for long rides on horseback. The field had changed over the decades. Some of it had been fenced, some plowed for farming. But enough remained wild that they could find the spot, or close enough to it. Logan helped Miriam down from the wagon and they walked slowly into the grass. Wildflowers still bloomed, different varieties than Logan remembered but beautiful nonetheless. The mountains still stood in the distance, eternal and unchanging. The sky was the same impossible blue. "Will you sing for me?" Logan asked. "One more time like that first evening," Miriam smiled. "My voice is not what it was." "It is exactly what it needs to be," so she sang. Her voice was thinner now, worn by time, but still pure, still true. She sang the same hymn she had been singing that first evening, 51 years ago. Logan stood watching her, seeing simultaneously the young woman of 23 and the woman of 74, all the years compressed into this single perfect moment. When she finished, they stood together in the field, holding each other, crying and laughing. "Thank you," Logan said, "for everything, for loving me, for saving me, for giving me this life. Thank you for listening, for hearing me when I needed to be heard." They stayed until the sun began to set, recreating that first evening. Then they climbed back into the wagon and drove home, to the house filled with photographs of children and grandchildren, to the life they had built together. Logan lived another 3 years, dying peacefully in his sleep at 77. Miriam held his hand as he passed, whispering that she loved him, that she would see him again. The funeral was huge, the entire town turning out to pay respects to a man who had arrived broken and alone, and left surrounded by family and community. Miriam lived 4 more years, spending the time with her children and grandchildren, teaching music to anyone who wanted to learn, keeping Logan's memory alive through stories. She spoke often about that first evening, about how a chance encounter had changed both their lives completely. She died on an autumn evening, sitting on her porch watching the sunset. Emma found her there an hour later, peaceful and still, a slight smile on her face. They buried her next to Logan in the Grass Valley Cemetery, under a tree that bloomed white flowers every spring. The family continued, generation after generation, all of them carrying forward the legacy of love and music that had started with a cowboy listening to a woman sing in a field. They told the story to their children, who told it to their children, keeping alive the memory of Logan and Miriam, of how two broken people had found each other and built something beautiful. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right across the Nevada prairie, if you listen carefully, you can still hear an echo of that song, a reminder that love and music and hope never truly die. They just transform, pass down through the years, finding new voices, new listeners, but always telling the same essential truth. That sometimes the most important moment of your life arrives unexpectedly, carried on the wind, and all you have to do is listen.